So TNA Impact returned to Orlando, Florida, and it was a special themed episode, Turning Point. The show starts with an Impact 365 video of Robert Roode going into a bar and basically beating the crap out of James Storm. This was a good setup for building toward the Roode-Storm match, even though there would be some eventual changes. So then we see Samoa Joe warming up backstage, preparing for his match against Magnus. Dixie Carter approaches him and tells him that she repeatedly watched herself from the show last week so that she can improve herself. She says that she was perfect, but Joe sucked. Dixie tells him that if he ever speaks up the way he did about AJ Styles, he will be wrestling in underdeveloped countries for Mexican coins. She says that if he wins the world title, there will be no match with Styles to unify the belts. And Dixie says that Styles will never return and that Joe is fortunate to still have a job, adding that the crowd would rather see her before seeing him. Samoa Joe needs to be involved in a meaningful program again, so this may be the opportunity for that to happen. Dixie may send someone after Joe in order to punish him for siding with AJ Styles. So this could turn out fairly well for Joe as far as being in a relevant storyline again. That, of course, depends on whom he would be facing. Who would be the wrestler that would come after him. So then we see Dixie come to the ring. She puts herself over in reference to the Sports Illustrated article on herself and TNA. Now let me take a small detour and say that it was quite laughable reading some of the things that Dixie said in this article as far as TNA is concerned. So if you haven't read it and you want to, it's available on Sports Illustrated's website. Dixie says that Styles has caused the fans to turn on him because of his treatment of her. She says that he didn't invest in her beliefs, and that is the reason why he is making little money for wrestling in other countries. Dixie says that he is improperly defending the world title without legal authorization and that her attorneys are going to stop him the next time he tries to do it. And she says that Styles will understand what will happen if he continues to defy her. But then James Storm comes to the ring. Storm recalls Robert Roode attacking him at the bar, and he shows Dixie the bull rope in his hand. He says that the bull rope is not the only thing that he wants to use in his match against Roode. Storm says that he wants to use other weapons as well, and since they are back in Florida, the bull rope match should be changed to a Florida death match. Dixie tells him that she couldn't care less about the incident at the bar and that since the Wheel of Dixie determined what the match would be, it can't be modified. Storm says that he could have had Roode arrested, but he wants to settle this in the ring. He tells Dixie that if she doesn't give him the match that he wants, he will have the cops take Roode to jail, and she will be embarrassed for not having this tournament match on the show. Dixie tells Storm that she doesn't like the way he is speaking to her. So he decides to ask her for the match in a calmer tone and tells her that he will leave the police out of the matter. She tells him that as long as the cops understand that everything is fine, she will give him the Florida death match, and she does. Storm came off good here and had the crowd behind him, but with Dixie being so terrible, how could he not? I do not like that tone! I do not like that tone! So then we had the first round match in the World Heavyweight Championship Tournament. Falls Count Anywhere match. Magnus versus Samoa Joe. Magnus comes to the ring, but Joe tells him to come to the back in order to start the match. Decent match. The match ends with Joe hitting Magnus with a suicide dive. Joe goes for the pin outside the ring, but Magnus gets his shoulder up. He pulls Joe by his shirt, sending him into the edge of the ring apron. Magnus walks around to the other side of the ring and looks under it for some type of weapon to use. He doesn't find it, so he walks back to his original spot and looks under the ring there. He pulls out a chair and wedges it in the corner between the middle and bottom ropes. Magnus gives Joe an uppercut. He tries to whip Joe into the corner, but Joe stops his momentum and grabs Magnus's arm. Magnus lunges forward with a clothesline, but Joe ducks and catches him with a rear naked choke. Magnus backs Joe up hard against the edge of the ring apron and escapes the hold. Joe charges toward the ring post at Magnus, but Magnus moves out of the way, causing Joe to go into the chair. He falls to the floor and Magnus covers him for the 3. The winner of the match, Magnus. Magnus will now first face Kurt Angle in a World Title Tournament semifinal. This match should have been better than it was, and how bad did that finish look, with Joe's hands hitting the chair instead of selling his head hitting it, even from that camera angle. Nevertheless, Magnus continues his momentum toward championship contender status, hopefully without a heel turn. So then we see Bad Influence come to the ring. Kazarian gets on the mic and basically says that they will be at ringside to watch dumbass Joseph Park wrestle Abyss. Then we see Park come to the ring. Park tells Christy Hemme to introduce Abyss. She does it twice and no one comes out. Daniels and Kazarian proceed to berate Park with insults, and Kazarian dumps a bucket of blood on Park's head. The humiliated Park leaves the ring and walks to the back. Bad Influence injected some serious tinges to their usual comedy shtick, and it came off in a good but different way, considering whom the object of their berating was. There is no point in talking about whether Abyss will return or not, because TNA is too insecure about letting Park go for good. So that's it as far as that topic goes. So then we had the women's match. Gail Kim versus Candice LeRae. And this is the second match of Gail Kim's Open Challenge. So-so match. The match ends with Gail charging the corner and nailing Candice with a drop kick. Gail goes for the pin, but Candice kicks out. Gail punches Candice and kicks her into the corner. She whips Candice to the opposite corner, but Candice jumps onto the middle rope and comes off with a Hurricane Rana. She follows that with a sunset flip for the pin, but Gail kicks out. Candice moves in toward Gail in the corner and delivers some forearms. She comes back out of the corner, goes back, and attempts a splash, but Gail moves out of the way. The two women exchange blows before Gail executes a sit-out powerbomb for the pin, but Candice kicks out. Gail follows that with the Eat Defeat and gets the 3. The winner of the match, Gail Kim. This was a terrible outing for Candice LeRae. She is much more talented than what she showed. Even within the boundaries of this being a squash match and knowing that Gail was going to win, Candice had the chance to impress and she didn't. Now, I would say that with the next 2 matches, Gail should struggle much more and maybe come close to losing in the 4th match in order to sell the chance of her losing better. The serious challenger is still out there, and hopefully it's Melissa Anderson. Now, a few people emailed me saying that Melissa can't return to TNA because she is the Shimmer champion. Her being the Shimmer champion wouldn't be a concern, because if TNA brought her back, she could easily drop that title at an independent show. Gail Kim versus Melissa Anderson on Impact. Book that shit. So then we see another video from the Friends of AJ. The video shows footage of AJ Styles in Japan and includes highlights of another quote-unquote title defense by Styles against Seiya Sanada of the Wrestle One promotion. It's amazing how these videos keep getting on the air with Dixie Carter being unable to stop them. who are these friends of AJ within TNA that are responsible for these videos airing? So then we see Jeremy Borash backstage with Mr. Anderson. Anderson says that Bully Ray tried to take what means the most to him, his livelihood and his family. And he says that he's going to take from Bully Ray, that being the breakup of Aces and Eights. So then we see James Storm and Gunner backstage. Gunner tells Storm that he doesn't need weapons to beat Robert Roode. And Storm tells him that he wants weapons to beat Roode. He tells Gunner that he is a better partner than Roode was and that he is going to beat Roode's ass. And Gunner says that he will always watch out for him, and they shake hands. So then we see a video segment on the history between Robert Roode and James Storm that shows them together as Beer Money, James Storm winning the world title, and Roode defeating Storm for that title. And this was a well done segment, particularly emphasizing the title match between the two in November of 2011, in which Roode beat Storm to become the world champion. So then we had the first round match in the World Heavyweight Championship Tournament, a Florida Death Match, Robert Roode versus James Storm. Good match. The match ends with weapons scattered inside and outside the ring. Roode picks up 2 chairs from outside and throws them into the ring. He opens the chairs and places them opposite each other. Roode picks Storm up and delivers a fireman's carry cutter on both chairs. The referee starts his 10 count, and before he makes it to 10, Storm is back on his feet. Roode picks up a crutch and jams it in Storm's midsection in the corner. Storm goes down and Roode hits him across the back with the crutch. Roode leaves the ring and pulls out a plywood board with barbed wire attached to it. He places it in the middle of the ring, and then he lifts Storm and prepares him for a fireman's carry cutter on the barbed wire. Gunner runs down to the ring and tosses a towel in the ring. The referee stops the match and the bell rings. Gunner pleads with Roode not to drop Storm on the barbed wire. Roode dumps Storm on the mat instead. The winner of the match, Robert Roode. Roode goes on to face Jeff Hardy in the other semifinal of the World Title Tournament. After the match, Storm yells at Gunner about the towel being thrown in the ring. Gunner tries to explain, but they continue to argue, and Storm eventually leaves. So obviously, this is a tease for a possible James Storm heel turn, which I guess he would need to refreshen his character. So I can understand it. And we have another terrible ending with Gunner and that towel. But I kept thinking about this. Why didn't Roode drop Storm on the barbed wire anyway? He told Storm earlier in the match that he wanted him to die. So why would Roode care about Gunner telling him not to drop Storm on the barbed wire? If TNA is going to have these hardcore matches, they can't let questionable storytelling affect the payoff that fans want. Don't pull out a plywood board with barbed wire attached to it if it's not going to be used. It was still a good match, but things like that are always going to stand out. So then we see Christy Hemme doing an Impact 365 piece on the balcony at the home of Sam Shaw, the former Gut Check winner. As they go inside, he tells her to refer to him as Samuel. He shows her his art book, which is filled with various illustrations. The piece ends, and off camera, Shaw asks Christy out for dinner. She writes her number on a post-it notepad and leaves it for him. Then Christy hugs him and leaves. And Shaw has a pissed look on his face as he walks to the table and adjusts the pen and the notepad back to their original positions. Then he appears calm. This was very interesting. This redefinition of Sam Shaw, giving him this OCD complex and setting him up to be this psycho who will torment Christie feels fresh and intriguing. So it will be interesting to watch. It will also be interesting to see the wrestler who will rescue Christie and go up against Shaw. So then we see Ethan Carter III backstage with Norv Furnham and Dewey Barnes. He tells them that he brought them to Orlando to tell them that he is ending their rivalry and that he will be facing a TNA legend in the ring. That's it. It's not a rivalry when one side is doing the winning. And why are these jobbers now getting backstage airtime? TNA is really going to push these two as a tag team, aren't they? Why am I thinking that TNA is going to put Furnham and Barnes in the ring against Robbie E. and Mr. Duh? Glorified jobbers versus actual jobbers. If I'm thinking that, the tag team division is one step in the coffin. If that match happens, the division will be completely in it. So then we see Jeremy Borash backstage preparing to interview Bully Ray as Brooke Tessmacher and Mike Knox accompany him. Knox takes the mic from Borash and shoves him out of the shot. He gives the mic to Tessmacher and she asks Bully Ray what he's going to do to Mr. Anderson. Bully Ray says that he has never come across such an unappreciative guy as Anderson. He says that he saved Anderson when TNA no longer cared about him. Bully Ray says that he will put Anderson down for good with the pile driver and go on to take care of Anderson's wife. Now we know that Bully Ray was going to lose to Mr. Anderson, but it still would have been visually sickening, in a good way, to see Bully Ray show up at Anderson's home to be with his wife. So then we see Kurt Angle backstage putting over Magnus, who will be his opponent in the World Title Tournament semifinal. When one of Dixie's flunkies appears and tells Angle that she needs to see him. So then we had Ethan Carter III versus Shark Boy. Ethan wins. Lame catchphrase follows. Don't give a damn about Shark Boy. Ethan progression moving slower than a snail. Next. We see a video segment detailing the history between Bully Ray and Mr. Anderson within Aces and Eights, from Anderson becoming the vice president to the situation now. Once again, an excellent job with the use of the video segment to build the anticipation for the match. So then we see Kurt Angle and Robert Roode standing face to face. Dixie appears in the shot, and as she constantly tells them to pay attention to her instead of each other, she says that next week will be a Dixie Carter themed episode of Impact, and that Angle and Roode will each captain a team of 4 in an 8-man elimination tag team match. She leaves and they just look at each other. I would have liked to have seen Roode and Angle start brawling instead of just standing there. What are you doing here? No, what are you doing here? I asked you first. I asked you second. And Dixie standing there treating them like kids. Outside of this match next week, this Dixie Carter themed Thanksgiving Impact already sounds like shit. So then we had the main event. Bully Ray versus Mr. Anderson, no DQ, club versus career. Mr. Anderson debuted his new AJ Styles-ish ring gear. Yeah. Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe, Magnus, Gunner, and TNA agent Simon Diamond come out before the match and watch from the stage. Bad Influence also come out, but they stand alone. Solid match. The match ends with Anderson pile-driving Mike Knox outside the ring. He rips off Knox's vest. Bully Ray hits Anderson from behind and puts him back in the ring. Bully Ray goes to the middle rope, but Anderson hits him in the midsection and executes a rolling fireman's carry slam. Anderson goes for the mic check, but Bully Ray breaks away and puts Anderson through the table, propped up in the corner. Bully Ray drags Anderson to the middle of the ring, goes for the pin, but Anderson kicks out. Bully Ray yells at Tessmacher, and she leaves ringside and then returns with the hammer. She stops at the bottom of the ramp and throws the hammer, which goes over Bully Ray's head and into Anderson's hands. Anderson hits Bully Ray with the hammer and delivers the mic check. He gets the pin. The winner of the match, Mr. Anderson. Aces and Eights must break up as a group. After the match, Anderson removes Bully Ray's vest from him. He points to Taz and tells the guys on the stage to get Taz's vest. So Angle, Joe, Gunner, and Magnus confront Taz, who voluntarily gives up his vest. Angle brings the vest to Anderson and he holds up the vest. The show ends. This was a disappointing end to the conclusion of Aces and Eights. The match didn't feel like the big deal that it should have been. Mike Tenay desperately tried to oversell by saying that the TNA locker room was out on the stage when there were only 5 people standing there, at least 5 on camera because Bad Influence came out, but they stood at the edge of the stage and weren't really seen. The TNA locker room means that we should see at least 20 people out there, at least 20, not 5 on camera. This match should have been more brutal, more violent, and Bully Ray being bloodied should have been the symbolic visual of his downfall. And the ending to this match was bad, with Tessmacher stopping at the bottom of the ramp and grossly overthrowing the hammer, which damn near cleared the ring. Forget about her running up to ringside and handing the hammer to Bully Ray or simply throwing it up to him from ringside. Bully Ray turns around, Anderson kicks him, Bully Ray drops the hammer, Anderson hits him with it, mic check, 3 count, done. A cleaner finish that is more believable, but that would have been too logical for TNA to do. So, Aces and Eights is done after 17 months, not 18. June 2012 to November 2013 is 17 months. Does the Extraordinary Gentlemen's Organization now become the next wrestling stable that rules in the company? The outlook is shaky for now, but if common sense sinks in with TNA Creative, it should happen. Did I say common sense and TNA Creative in the same sentence? I guess we have our answer. I'm Tazmart 2002, and that was my TNA Impact analysis for November 21st, 2013. If you're listening to me on YouTube, please leave your comments below, click the like or dislike button, and if you subscribe, I would really appreciate it. If you're listening to me on the Wrestling News Talk Facebook page, you can leave your comments below and click the like button if you like what I've been saying. If you have any questions or comments for me about TNA or wrestling in general, you can reach me on Twitter, Tazmart2002, that's Tazmark 2002. And if your comments exceed the 140, get at me with an email. Tazmart2002 at gmail.com. And be sure to listen to the TNA Impact analysis that I do with Chuck P every Friday morning at 11:30 Eastern Time on Chuck P's channel. And if you haven't visited his channel, give him a look. Decent show. Terrible endings to the 3 main matches, but a decent show. Gail Kim is 2 matches in with her open challenge. And eventually she will face that wrestler that will beat her for the title shot. Who will that be? I have mentioned the name Melissa Anderson. So why her? In addition to the obvious that she is the best overall female wrestler on the damn planet, she has 2 connections with Gail that provide a ready-made storyline. Gail and Melissa wrestled each other on TNA's all-female one-night-only pay-per-view that aired this past September. Gail won that match, so Melissa could come in seeking revenge for that loss. Also, the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Female 50 was recently released. It's an annual list of the top 50 female wrestlers in the business. Melissa is number 1 on this year's list. Gail was number 1 on the list last year. Thus, here is the opportunity for both of them to settle this as far as whom the number 1 woman in wrestling really is. This is laid out perfectly for TNA to do, but will they? Likely not. It's TNA. Will they recognize how much Melissa Anderson would mean to the women's division if she returned to TNA? Likely not. It's TNA. Does this Gail Kim Open Challenge have the potential to end up turning into some bullshit? Likely so. Why? Exactly. I'm Tazmark 2002. Gone.